Hi, everybody. Good evening to you. It is the 19th of April. I'm Nate Eaton. This is Courtroom Insider. I'm not in Boise right now. I'm in my basement, in my son's room, broadcasting live. I got home from Boise about 30 minutes ago and put together some stuff to talk about tonight because there is a lot to talk about tonight. Court was short today. We were only there until the lunch break, and then Judge Boyce dismissed. By the way, I apologize that this monitor is going through a slideshow. I don't know why. I can't get it to freeze, but I guess it'll keep your attention. Let me know where you're watching from. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to try to get to as many questions tonight as possible. I'll have a couple of shout outs. Today was a packed house. I shouldn't say packed because the courtroom wasn't completely full, but there were more people there today than in a long time. I got to meet a lot of cool people from all over the place. It was nice chatting with a few of you. Let me know in the comments if you were there and what you thought of the whole experience. Being there in person is definitely different than watching it on TV or on your phone or on a computer, and especially today when there was a lot to talk about, a lot there. We have a full show tonight. I do have an announcement I want to tell you about at the end of the broadcast about how things are going to work next week with Courtroom Insider. But tonight, text messages revealed. Remember those sexy text messages from last year in Lori's trial? They are starting to come out, and they started to come out today. And that's what we are I'm going to play a couple of those tonight. You can see exactly how the questioning went. Of course, Melanie Gibb was back on the stand this morning, continuing her, John Pryor was continuing his cross-examination of Melanie Gibb. She was on the stand most of yesterday, back on there today. Pryor, had a couple of questions for her that she pushed back on. And I know many of you have your thoughts about Melanie Gibb and her role as a witness. She answered everything Pryor asked, though. I'll play you a couple of clips there. She was asked about giving police, if she ever gave police, hair or DNA. And I'll play those answers for you here in a minute. Portals and translated beings were discussed. At this point, we've kind of heard a lot of this stuff before, but if you have not followed this trial and you are just dropping in because you're at home on a Friday night and have no idea what I'm talking about, buckle up. I'll try to explain some of this stuff that might be foreign to you. Doug Hart, retired FBI agent, he took the stand. He was actually in charge of the investigation for the FBI. From the FBI standpoint, he was the guy leading the whole thing on their end. He was on the stand today. He's now a chief deputy in Canyon County, Idaho, with the sheriff's office. Again, he was on the stand last year, later on in the trial last year. This year, he's more toward the beginning. And he basically just walked through text messages for most of his testimony today. Very interesting text messages. These aren't just, hey, how are you? What do you want for dinner? It was more like, hey, I enjoyed having a shower with you this morning, even though Lori was not physically there with Chad. We'll get into it. Steamy text messages, as I say. We'll keep it PG rated. Don't worry, you don't have to send the kids out. And a lot more to talk about tonight. So as I mentioned, here were the two people on the stand today, Melanie Gibb and Doug Hart, and they didn't waste any time jumping into their testimony. Lindsay Blake from the prosecutor, she is the one who questioned both of these witnesses on behalf of the prosecution, and then John Pryor questioned Melanie, but he has not yet, it's not his turn yet for cross-examination on Doug Hart. And as I mentioned, we had a short day. We got out at noon, so it was great. Was able to drive home, gives the prosecutor and the defense and the judge a rest. I know many of you have messaged me and been like, is this trial ever going to get done? They're taking so many breaks and they're letting out early and, they're not meeting on Friday. I have to tell you, as a spectator, it actually, in the courtroom, I cannot imagine how much work these guys are under. There's so much to do. Just observing and labeling all of these exhibits and all of your questions for these witnesses and lining them up and planning it out. So I would imagine to them, while to us as a public, we might want to rush and hurry and get a verdict, I think that taking your time is the best bet. I mean, O.J. Simpson, that trial took 9 months. So I don't think we'll be here for 9 months. We better not be, but if we're here at Christmas time, somebody send me a candy cane or something. Let's jump right into it. Okay, we're going to start off. One of the first questions Pryor asked Melanie Gibb is if she ever gave police a DNA or a hair sample. I'm just going to play you the clip.
You never did provide a hair sample to any law enforcement agency in this case. Is that right?
Correct.
You never turned over your phone or was requested to turn over your phone to any law enforcement agency. Is that correct?
Correct.
You were never requested or did turn over any email or any email accounts or social media accounts to law enforcement at their request. Is that correct?
Correct.
You did, however, in 2021, provide a DNA sample to a Rexburg or a Fremont County officer a couple of years after this alleged incident. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so some of you have asked, well, why is he asking about that? Remember the other day how he asked, I believe it was yesterday, or I forget who John Pryor asked, but he said if 4 people were there. Oh, he asked Nicole Heidemann, if 4 people were there when JJ died, why did you never check Melanie Gibb's emails or David Warwick's emails? Why did you never investigate their stuff? And it could be that he might be setting her up or trying to say that Melanie Gibb should have been looked at more as a suspect in all of this. But she did say that she gave that DNA sample, and they mentioned that last year at Lori's trial when that hair was found on JJ's body. I believe it was during that same testimony where they had DNA from Gibb and from Lori Vallow, and that the hair was Lori Vallow's. So interesting tidbit there for Pryor to start with. He then goes on to talk about this phone call and the timing of the phone call that Melanie Gibb made to Chad and Lori after Chad and Lori told her to tell the cops that JJ was with her and to go to the movies and take a picture of a random kid at Frozen. And this was when the call she recorded, and Pryor was trying to grill her on if she had worked with law enforcement, I think, to record this call, that coordinated with law enforcement to record the call. And Melanie Gibb said, no, she didn't. But there was also another interesting fact that came out that Melanie Gibb took a little bit of time. She originally told the police that JJ was with her, but then she sent JJ back to be with his mom. And then a little bit of time passed before she went to the police and said, actually, I lied. He wasn't with me. And then she worked with law enforcement to get it cleared up. And Pryor was really stressing that. You lied, you lied, you lied, and then you thought about it. And he really tried to question her about her lack of memory. And again, I mentioned this last night. This took place in 2019. And so it's been several years since this happened. And she admitted that. She goes, I have a hard time remembering things first. And this was long ago. I've kind of tried to put it out of my mind. But here is where John Pryor questions her about that phone call. And if you haven't heard the phone call, I won't play it tonight. You can go to our YouTube channel and listen to that phone call. It's about 20 minutes, I think, where she basically says, why did you tell me to lie to the cops and say that I had JJ? And Lori predominantly spoke on that call. Chad did interject a couple times. He answered the phone, hello, sweet Melanie. And but basically Lori kind of took over on that call. But here's what happened today.
Decided to go to the police to let them know what really happened. And that was the 2 weeks later, right?
Okay, hold up. Stand by. I'm going to play this clip so that you can see the video. I know so many of you like to analyze the faces as best as you can see. And they moved that camera off of Chad the other day, but hopefully you can see it. Maybe this window can play it a little bit better. No, that one's not going to work either. Thank you for your patience. Let me just go into this other program and have it load up. Okay, so the line of questioning was along, here we go, I think. The line of questioning was along the call. And one thing that stood out kind of to me, but really stood out to someone I spoke with after as I was leaving the courtroom. Another reporter grabbed me and he was like, "Did you hear John Pryor question her about the murder agenda that Lori had, that try to insinuate that maybe Lori and Melanie were the two that knew about JJ's murder and Chad didn't, and that's why Lori didn't want to speak?" Interesting angle there to take. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that Pryor was insinuating that maybe Lori wouldn't tell Melanie because Chad would overhear where and what happened to JJ and where JJ was. I don't know what you think about that theory, but it's a possibility. Okay, I think I have it now.
Decided to go to the police to let them know what really happened. And that was the 2 weeks later, right?
However many times it was, how many weeks, yes.
Okay. Okay. And then at some point yesterday, you testified that without talking to any law enforcement, you then took it upon yourself to record the conversation between you and Lori, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Ms. Gibb, and that occurred on about the 8th of December of 2019. Does that sound correct?
If you're referring to the recording, yes.
Recording, yes. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so he's trying to drill down and figure out which day the recording actually took place. He then goes on to talk about the fact and asks Melanie Gibb, did she ever go and talk to people about dark and light and portals? And she clarified that this is not teaching in the LDS church, that this is kind of their own little teaching of this own little group. And she told John Pryor there that, no, I did not. I only talked about this with people in our group. And then John Pryor brings up a text message that I believe she sent to Lori about two people who were super dark. And it sounded like it was a text message sent out of frustration about these two people. So Pryor then said, so you did talk about this dark and light and portals and whatnot with other people outside of the group. And Melanie Gibb again said, no, I didn't. And I'm just kind of paraphrasing here. He then said, well, you did. You talked about these two other people that were apparently dark. And you were talking about this. He asked her if she had gone to encampments, like gone to preached at encampments and taught these things at camps in the mountains. And she goes, no, I've never done that. He asked her about the schedule when Melanie visited Lori that weekend in September, the weekend that JJ died. He really went through day by day. She landed at the airport. They went to Johnny Carino's for dinner. They went to the Gravity Factory, which is like a trampoline place, the next day. They went and had pizza. She went to her conference on Saturday, the Book of Mormon conference. It was all day long. She texted that she had taken photo after photo after photo, a bunch of photos. And then on Sunday, Lori cut her hair. Lori colored her hair. They went and looked at 2 plots of land. And I discussed this a bit last night, but this is when apparently they believe the coming of Jesus, this is where the righteous would settle. Or at least that's what Chad told them. I can't 100% say that because that wasn't testimony today, but that's what we had heard, that they were planning for the gathering of these people. And Melanie and David Warwick, her boyfriend, went to look for these plots of land. And then they went back to Lori's house to record the podcast. And they started the podcast later in the evening, and it went until about midnight. And then on Monday, Pryor said, did you sleep in? Or did you sleep in on Sunday? And she goes, I don't sleep in. She was up around 7. Monday, they woke up. David and Melanie woke up, and they took off, and they went to see his son in Pocatello. And it was sometime over that night. That was the night David had the nightmare that that they believe JJ passed away. So Prior question, Melanie Gibb, I would say about, I don't know, an hour or two. Talked about zombies. Here's a little bit more of what he asked her.
Police to let them know what really happened. And that was the 2 weeks later, right?
However many times how many weeks, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And then at some point yesterday, you testified that without talking to any law enforcement, you then took it upon yourself to record the conversation between you and Lori, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Ms. Gibb, and that occurred on about the 8th of December of 2019. Does that sound correct?
If you're referring to the recording, yes.
Recording, yes. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you recall having a call to Ray Hermosillo?
Yes.
Right. And well, your testimony previously was, or yesterday was that you didn't talk to anybody from the police department before you made that call, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the evidence.
Overruled.
You testified that you did not call or talk to anybody with law enforcement prior to recording that call to Lori Vallow. Is that correct?
Your Honor, again, I'm going to object. This misstates her testimony.
I'll sustain that objection.
Did you have any contact with law enforcement prior to making that recorded call to Chad and Lori?
I wasn't aware of the dates, so I'm not sure exactly when those dates were.
Oh, so are you saying you did talk to law enforcement?
I did.
Oh, prior to it, right?
I'm not sure of the dates.
Okay. Well, would it refresh your recollection that there were 2 calls to the Rexburg police with Ray Hermosillo on the 6th of December and the 7th of December? Does that spark your memory a little bit?
No, I don't recall the dates.
Okay.
It's just your memory, not mine.
Okay. And you don't have any recollection of talking to the police beforehand then, right?
Beforehand, what?
Before you recorded the call to Chad?
I could have, or after, or before. I didn't recall the timing.
Well, isn't it true you testified yesterday that you didn't talk to the police when it was inquired?
Objection, Your Honor, that misstates the testimony.
Sustained.
So you did talk to the police on the 6th and 7th with Ray Hermosillo by phone before you made that phone recording to Chad and Lori, right?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. She's already said she doesn't recall the dates.
I'll overrule that if she has any additional answer.
Ma'am?
You want to repeat the question, Mr.
Oh.
Pryor?
There was contact with law enforcement before you made that recording, right?
There was contact. I don't recall the time.
Okay. And you don't even recall the date, right?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, during that phone call, I touched on this yesterday a little bit. And Lori's comments on the phone call were, I had to move her somewhere else. You recall that?
Sounds familiar, yes.
I will do whatever the Lord needs me to do.
Right.
I love you so much. I know you, and you said, I know you do, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I noticed during the phone call that the majority of the conversation was between you and Lori. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And that the only time Chad got on the phone call is when he was talking about, his premonition about Tammy, and that he feels that someone's trying to jump on him as a result of this issue between you and Lori. Would that be fair?
Objection, Your Honor, the call speaks for itself and that misstates what was in the call.
Sustained.
But you would agree with me that Chad was really not a primary or significant portion of that call, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, one of the things I took note of during the phone call was that Lori made the comment, you more than anyone else knows the truth when she was talking to you. Do you
Yeah.
recall that?
Yes.
Isn't it true, ma'am, that that was a way for her to hide the fact that Miss Gibb, you and Lori Vallow know the truth about what happened to JJ Vallow on the 23rd of September, correct?
No.
Okay. How about the 22nd of September, ma'am?
No.
Okay. Isn't it true that Lori was being very vague on that phone call because Chad was there and she didn't want Chad to know that you were going to talk about the murder of JJ Vallow?
I have no idea what her agenda was.
Okay.
Okay. So there you go. He again asked about translated beings, and or Lindsay Blake came back and asked about translated beings. And basically, when you were translated, you were so righteous that you no longer needed to eat, or I don't think you needed to sleep. And what's interesting is that Lori had told some of her friends who I have spoken with, including Melanie Gibb, that she didn't need to eat anymore, that she was fine. She didn't need to eat, but yet she would eat. So anyway, you can go listen to all of the testimony from Melanie Gibb. We have put all of it together into one clip, and we'll post it tonight on our YouTube channel. It's long, it's several hours, but I know that it was interesting testimony. And this was the first person we've heard so far this trial who really hasn't been like law enforcement or a special agent or an accountant, something along. This is a first kind of personal witness that we've heard. Doug Hart then took the stand, and he, as I mentioned, is the FBI supervisor who was in charge with the FBI's case, their side of things when this case broke. And I just want to, he went through Lori's iCloud accounts. Lori had 2 iCloud accounts, and one was used predominantly most of the time. The other was just set up in July of 2019. So a couple of days, beginning of the month of July, just 9 or 10, 11 days before Charles Vallow died, was shot and killed. And so all of that stuff got saved in the iCloud. These text messages back and forth between her and Chad. And there were some steamy ones. As I said, we'll talk about that. And I just want to pull some of these up just to read them. And Doug Hart, I recalled in Lori's trial that he actually read them, but Pryor objected to him reading them in court. And he said that the demonstrative exhibit has already been admitted as a demonstration in the court as an exhibit, so he doesn't need to read them. It's just wasting time. And the judge agreed with that. And so what Lindsay Blake did is she would put the texts up, she would give the jurors 20, 30 seconds to read, and then she would ask Doug Hart specific questions. And so let's jump in. I hope you can see those. I might try to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, there we go. What I'm going to do is start here at the bottom. So actually we'll start here. Let me 1040. First text right here. A text, these all came from the Lori for Style account. Lindsay Blake is questioning Hart. She shows the first slide. It's a text message from Lori to Audrey Baratario. Baratario. Remember, Audrey is a friend. She's in the inner circle. She testified last year, and she'll probably testify this year. Hi, Audrey. This is Lori. I would like to talk to you sometime. Text me or call me. I'm excited to be able to talk to you about what we both know. Smiley face. 2 minutes later, Audrey responds, Hi, Lori. Guess you talked to Chad. Haha. Did he tell you I have a crazy work schedule? I might be able to talk tonight. I'll have to play it by ear, and I wouldn't know until 9:30 p.m. or after. The same for tomorrow. Lori responds, He did. That's okay. Just let me know when you're available. No pressure. I think it's fun to talk to someone who knows what's really going on. Audrey responds, So what times usually work for you? I usually talk to him on my lunch breaks on Mondays or Tuesday. Sunday afternoons I can talk. So Chad is already chatting with this other woman about what's really going on. The truth, whatever. Audrey is a friend and associate of Chad. Chad introduced Audrey to Lori. So Chad knew Audrey before he met Lori. Audrey's young woman. Hart said that Lori was really excited to talk to Audrey, of course, because it's about what they both know. Then we get into texts from Melanie Boudreau, who is now Melanie Pulowski, to Brandon. These were sent on July 13th, 2 days after Charles Vallow is killed. Brandon is making me promise to not have you or Al around my house or kids. Remember, this is 2 days after Alex shot Charles. Would you not say the same thing? If your uncle shot and killed your uncle shot and killed your other uncle, your uncle-in-law, Charles. I don't know if I would want that person coming around my house. Brandon is making me promise not to have you says your, or Al, a lot of these texts had typos, around my house or kids. He's talked to a lawyer, and he said his lawyer said that due to the circumstances, he can do that. What do I do? Melanie sends another message. He brought Allie Bloomer's husband here, who is a cop. Chad then texts Lori. He can't do that, just like he can't get a restraining order on you. The mediator will make that clear. You and Al did have any charges against you. I think he meant didn't. Chad then sends another message. I will check Allie Bloomer and husband. Again, there was typos. So what Hart was trying to prove here is Melanie texts Lori. Brandon says, you can't come over. Neither can Al. And Alex Cox. Allie Bloomer is one of Brandon's friends who has a husband as a cop. Lori then goes to Chad. Chad says, I'll check them. What he meant was he was checking their light and dark level. Then Chad would report back to Lori, who would report back to Melanie. Hart says this proved they would go to Chad for all of the direction. Good idea, Lori responds to Chad. Chad responds, Allie Bloomer is 4.1 dark. Her cop husband is 3 dark. I suppose Brandon doesn't yet know about the discovered Charles texts? Lori to Chad. Not yet, but I'm sure he knows it's not good. They have had a lot of conflict. Mel says he looks scared. Lori then goes to Melanie. Allie Bloomer's husband 3, dark emoji. Chad to Lori. His emotions are 75% panic, 25% fear. Yeah, he's a little worried. Next slide. Lori texts, can you clear Mel's new house? She's sleeping there tonight, and check for recording devices. Chad to Lori, glad we are in sync. I will clear the house and check it. Was he surprised when she returned home early? Chad to Lori, I'm working on the house, but having to break down some dark entities Brandon created. I detect 3 listening devices. Lori then says to Melanie, from your dad. I'm working on the house, but having to break down some dark entities Brandon created. I detect 3 listening devices. Chad was not there. If for those of you saying, oh, he went over to the house and searched the house and found these devices, Chad was not physically there. He was in Idaho. So you're saying, how did he do this? How did he clear the houses? How did he detect these listening devices? Great question. But remember, they're going to Chad for this information. And when the requests are made, Chad responded. There's another text. Again, July 13th. Same day, late, 11:06 p.m. right here. I'm going to turn it in blue. Chad to Lori, concerning the 2 weeks, BYU Idaho's graduation is July 23rd. Adam, his son, Chad's son, is getting his bachelor's. Lee and Joe are getting their associates. They're all walking in the same commencement ceremony. I feel she will be gone by then. Tammy. But I still have that hoopla to deal with because a lot of mine and Adam's families are coming and will stay for July 24th. So I believe that's why the Lord hinted I might not be able to get with you until that is over. Please ask about that. Okay, so he's already talking about Tammy dying in July. July, August, September. 3 months before she actually did die. The next morning, 7:42 a.m. My apologies. Good morning, my most beautiful Lily. Thank you for joining me in the shower this morning. Wow. Hart clarified Lori was not in the shower with him physically. She was in Arizona. Again, he's in Idaho. Getting ready to leave for my meetings. Does noon your time look like a time we could talk? I love you so immensely that the whole universe knows it. And very soon the people on all this little blue globe will know it too. We know it. We know it. Lori responds at 8:19. Morning sunshine. Sure, call me if you get a chance. Hart says Lori was in Arizona. Chad was in Idaho. Then Chad, the next day. I love you so much. You are my greatest desire and my best friend. Now on with the story. The story. The goddess lover story. I remember the first time we got this. I think it was when the police department in Chandler released a ton of documents. And this novel was in there. And it was just something. And what it is Chad texted Lori a novel, a love story, and it's stored in Lori's iCloud. But he didn't call himself James. He didn't call himself Chad. He called himself James. And he didn't call her Lori. He called her Elena. So it's the James and Elena story. And it's long. We've got the whole thing. You should go read it. If you haven't read it and you're into this case, go read it. They pulled bits and pieces out for the detective, for the FBI agent to reference. So here we go. Part of the novel. They would both attend the same event in mid-November, and it seemed that day would never arrive. Each day they opened their hearts to each other a little more. James knew he could trust her with the mysteries of the universe that had been revealed to him. He knew they had been married before, and they had been close friends with the Savior when he lived in Jerusalem. James had served an important position in the Lord's church, and Elena had been his beloved spouse and best friend. That relationship was now meant to continue in this lifetime. I found it interesting that Chad is repeatedly saying he's the leader. He served in an important position. He was the chosen one, paraphrasing. And Rob Wood said that in his opening statement, that he craved relevancy, significance. He wanted to be significant. And I don't know if that stems from his upbringing. I know that he has brothers who are all very successful. He has wives. Or he doesn't have wives. He has family members who have achieved a lot, have wonderful families, have done a lot. And Chad was this funeral gravedigger. And then he wrote some books that didn't really get much of a following. And he was craving these relevance, these positions of relevancy. He wanted to be a bishop in his ward. Like the bishop, for those not familiar with the LDS faith, you're the leader of the congregation. You're asked to do that, volunteer, and you don't get paid, but it rotates every 5 or 6 years. There's a new bishop in place. He wanted to be the leader. He never was asked to be the bishop. But here in this romance novel, he is in an important position in the Lord's church, and by his side is the wonderful Lori. As James and Elena talked on the phone, he tried to delicately describe their connection to each other, and he was delighted that she believed him. He also shared that they'd been married other times on a previous world, and she accepted that information as well. James was overjoyed to have these memories restored to him because he truly loved her with all of his heart. He knew they were meant to be married again and complete important missions before the second coming. Next slide. He also became aware that his spirit would visit her at night, and they would wrap around each other in a sensual embrace. Kissing her was so wonderful and real, and he knew that the next time they saw each other, he needed to kiss her. He couldn't be able to resist holding her. He was absolutely in love with her in every way. Chad to Lori, the next day. She asks, "How are you doing?" "I'm hanging in there, but really missing you too. Please find out the name of Mel's camp out in Utah. I have no intention of going, but I feel it is our avenue to get together, whether she's here or not, whether she is still here or not." Referring to Tammy, whether she's still here or not. Lori says it's Zion's family camp. Mel speaks Wednesday night. Dave speaks Thursday night. Shelly M is their main speaker. I roll. Sorry, Shelly, if you're watching. I'm sure you give really good speeches. Don't believe this. Chad says, my trip to speak at the camp July 24th to 26th has been approved and is now on the calendar. They're planning ways to get together. Then Chad says to Lori, I need so badly to gently kiss you for hours. Chad, it would likely lead to other activities. Lori to Chad, likely or luckily? Chad to Lori, it would luckily lead to nakedness. Hart says there was a lot of sexting messages on the iCloud. This was just one example. Just wait for Monday. If they go down the same line they went through with Lori, we're going to be talking about a storm on Monday. And those of you that know what that means, hang on to your hats. If you don't, you should be ready. I don't think I will ever forget that day. Side note here. I'll break the news to you if you aren't familiar with it. Storm referred to Chad's penis. And he tells Lori in one of these texts to just grab the Storm and they'll ride off together or something like that. So that night, when that testimony was given in court, that night, a huge storm moved in through Boise. It rained like crazy. Lightning, thunder, tons and tons and tons of rain. The next day, someone I know who works at the courthouse had not heard Chad's testimony and went in and said to her colleagues, man, that was a big storm last night. And they all just died laughing. So sorry, we'll talk more about that next week. Let me continue on with the texts that were brought up in court today. I know this was the 15th of July, so there's repeated days, day after day, they're texting. I know this won't get to you for another hour or so, but my love for you is overflowing right now. I just want to hold you endlessly. You are my wonderful best friend I can't live without. Lori responds, and yet you are. You are living without me. So sad. Missing you. Just landed. Gotta get to work. Doug Hart said Lori used this as a way to manipulate Chad. And there's more texts that come out that kind of remind you of like teenagers back and forth. She's like, well, yeah, you are living without me. You say you can't, but you are. Your wife's still alive. What's happening there? I'm just paraphrasing, of course. Then on the 18th, a few days later, Lori says to Chad, I just got the letter from the insurance company saying I'm not the beneficiary. It's a spear through my heart. Who do you think changed it? He changed it to Brandon or probably Kay. He left nothing for JJ. Chad to Lori, wow, that's terrible. There's no way to find out. They go back and forth and Chad says, it will be interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest. Chad then says there should be a paper trail, and this is another step to bringing down the Gadiantons, especially Brandon. Lori responds that he, Charles, can change the life insurance at any time. Smith asks Hart what Gadiantons mean. He says the Gadiantons were a group of people from the Book of Mormon. They were robbers. They were thieves. When the phrase is used, it identifies someone as being a bad person, as being evil. So they clearly say that Brandon is an evil Gadianton robber. Chad tells Lori he thinks Kay is the beneficiary. And then he says she was probably freaking out after Lori got those computers. And I don't know which computers he's referring to there. He then says he's going to take a shower and give her a blessing. Again, they're not in person. The next day, Lori breaks the news to him that the insurance company was changed back in March. And she's still going to get the $4,000 a month from Social Security. But it was probably changed when Charles was Ned, she said. Remember, Ned was that evil spirit who was in his body. Okay, then a few days later, July of 2019, Lori says to Chad, found it. Ned gave all of it to Rhonda. Who is this Rhonda? Rhonda is Kay Woodcock, her special name that they gave her. She was dark. Chad to Lori, glad you found out. Lori to Chad, it fits. Now she will try to take him. Thanks for working on her. Work on me too. Reading all this stuff makes me sick. Chad to Lori, we will work hard on Rhonda when we are together. I will get her numbers as low as I can by Wednesday. Lori to Chad, good. Let's work hard on it. Let's work on it hard. JJ was dark. Tylee was dark. Tammy was dark. Brandon was dark. Kay was dark. Kay is alive. Brandon is alive, but someone attempted to kill Brandon. Would have been interesting about Kay if she could have been next. At this point, Lindsay Blake pauses and says, was there ever any text messaging that Lori and Chad were grieving the death of Charles? Anything? He said none at all. Okay, we're going to go back to the romance novel. It's not over. We have more. And notice how Chad would text her bits and pieces of it. We don't know if he was writing it all at once, if he wrote it all at once, it was just copying and pasting bits and pieces, or if he was writing it as the days went on. But on the 21st of July at 8:17, James and Elena have agreed to visit the temple the following morning. She returned to the hotel room, and after additional romance on the couch, somebody washed that couch, they calmed their nerves enough to give each other a blessing. As James placed his hands on her head, he connected with Elena's true eternal self. He knew he was, not Hugh Oz, he was in the presence of an exalted goddess who'd returned to Earth to perform a special mission. This mission included being with him, and they would progress together as translated beings. The full plan wasn't yet completely clear to him, but the immense power radiating from her confirmed his belief that she was among the greatest women in the universe. Then they embraced following the blessing, and the emotions were felt with a mixture of eternal bliss and celestial desire. The sexual chemistry was undeniable, but the spiritual unity was a glorious bonus for them both. They had only known each other for 3 weeks, but two lonely, misunderstood souls had finally found their best friend that they could trust and confide in. And then Lori responded, she loves it. Doug Hart said that Chad and Lori went into the Arizona Gilbert Temple, the LDS Temple, a couple of weeks after they met each other. Now, I know there's questions many of you have had about sealings and the temples and whatnot. LDS members believe that when you are sealed in a temple, first of all, you have to go meet with your bishop, and then you have to meet with the leader above him, who's the stake president over all of the areas, STAKE, stake president. They give you a document that says you can go to the temple, and you go inside, and there's a person who is in a position called a sealer, and you are sealed together as a couple for time here on this earth and after you die. It's very formal. A record is taken. It's noted on your membership form within the church. People don't just go in there and stand in a room and seal each other to whoever. It's formal. It's documented. Chad and Lori didn't do that formal process. It appears they went in and sealed themselves to each other or had someone do it. And it will likely come out, because it did at Lori's trial, that she felt she was sealed to Moroni, who is a Book of Mormon prophet. Then Chad says, talking about James and Elena, they arrived at the temple and they both felt they should do sealings together. They were soon seated in a sealing room facing each other. Elena looked so stunning as she smiled at him. She seemed calm while he felt quite nervous. Their opportunity soon came to kneel across the altar from each other, and as the sealer pronounced those sacred words, James and Elena knew they were now sealed as husband and wife for eternity. As the earthly sealing was taking place, a similar scene involving their spirits was happening on a higher plane, where they kissed and unified their souls. They knew they had just begun a new journey together that was eternal and never-ending. Now, we don't know 100% of what happened inside that temple with them. There is a chance that Latter-day Saints, after they do these sealings for themselves, when they get married, they can go back and do them for people who have died, who never had a chance to be sealed. So you could like go for your grandfather or someone who has never had a chance to do this. So you do it in proxy for someone. So it's possible that they went and did this with a sealer, but that they had someone else's names. I'm not really sure how all of that worked, and we don't know, but clearly they went to the temple, and the bottom line is they both had their spouses were still alive. Okay, then Lori says on the 21st of July, it's making me happy to read about our life, that I'm finally going to dance. Missing you and loving you from afar. Lori to Chad, it was great. I feel free again. I love you more than ever and can't wait to be with you forever. I'm begging father and mother. That's my job tonight. Chad to Lori, I will be right beside you, begging you just as much. I need you desperately. Lots of emojis, by the way, in all of these texts. Doug Hart clarified that they had a clear plan to be together forever, and they were begging God for it to happen. And again, Tammy Daybell was alive when these messages were sent. Blake asked if there was ever any indication that they planned to get divorced or separated, and Hart said no. Okay, on the 22nd of July, the next day, Chad told her that he was going to go see a movie with his son. It was The Other Side of Heaven, Part 2, and it was, I guess, filmed in Kauai or a tropical place because Lori told her, you'll love the scenery. It will remind you of Kauai. And then after the movie, Chad wrote back, hi, darling, we enjoyed it. I look forward to being with you on a tropical island. And here comes Harry Potter. We talked about this last week. This was brought up again a few days later. I'm home, missing you immensely and feeling very tired, but I had a splendid time with you, my love. I will text again soon. Remember the earlier text, how he said he was going to get that time to try to go be with her. And so I don't know if this was after that time, but regardless, he says he loves spending time with her. I believe that was physically together. It's hard to keep it straight. Chad then texts, tonight I figured out who I feel like. I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover, but then I have to return to my place under the stairs feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming. Chad was Chad today. I know lots of you were saying, well, what was his reaction? Did he, smile? Did he bow his head? He just was him. He occasionally wrote notes, would pass them to his attorney, show him the notepad. He looked at Melanie sometimes. He looked at the jurors. Lots of jurors were taking notes. The final text that we went through today was on July 28th. Lori sends it to Chad. Are you mad? Sad? What? Chad to Lori. I'm doing okay. Just no privacy here to hardly text, and I'm missing you immensely. I feel good about the trip. Lori to Chad. I need a distraction while I'm waiting for you. I love you. Chad to Lori. Absolutely. I think you'll have a fun time. Hart said that Lori was going to Southern California with Alex and Melanie Boudreau, her niece, and that she said she needed a distraction because she was waiting to be with Chad. She wanted to be with Chad. And then at that point, we dismissed. So Doug Hart will be back on the stand come Monday morning. He will continue likely going through the text messages. And I will not be there. I am leaving town on Monday and will be gone next week. I have a friend getting married overseas and two friends. They're marrying each other. They're both really good friends. I've known my one friend since 2009. And they've planned on having a wedding for 24-24. And I thought for sure years ago, oh, this trial will be long over by then, but it's not. So Erica and I are leaving. We will be traveling next week. But don't worry, because my colleagues, Caitlin and Kalama and Andrea, are going to update every day from the as the proceedings are going on. They're going to keep track of all the notes. And I'm going to try to do a couple of Courtroom Insiders next week on location from overseas. And it all depends on the internet and if I get time. I'm going to really try to unplug from this trial, but I can't. I know I can't. And I know I'm going to be really involved reading the updates and probably live streaming it. and then I will just want to talk with you about it. So you'll probably see me on and off next week, and Erica might join me. I will definitely be back here Sunday night. We'll do I'll be here at the house Sunday night, and we'll do a what you can look forward to for next week, and then probably Monday night, and then we'll see about the rest of the week. And then we get back Friday late. Saturday is the vigil in Idaho Falls. Sorry, the memorial service for JJ and Tylee that Kay and Larry Woodcock are putting on. We'll stream that live on eastidahonews.com. Really, wherever you're watching this right now, you can watch that. That's at 1 p.m. Mountain Time next Saturday, not tomorrow, but the 27th. We'll have that live. And then that night, I'll be back doing Courtroom Insider, special edition Saturday night to recap everything I missed. I know I just said a lot of stuff, and you're probably like, what is he talking about? We don't even care. But just know that Courtroom Insider will be sporadic next week, but we'll get all caught up, and then I'm not going to miss any more of the trial until we have a verdict, unless it goes for 9 months. Excuse me. I might miss a day or two. Okay, let me get to your questions. Here we go. And some shout outs too. Okay. Man, you all have some good questions. A lot of questions, but that's good. Danger Zone, thank you for donating to East Idaho News. I appreciate that. Not there yet. Rye the Guy, Emmy Albers, Jocelyn D. Avernay, and Selena Thomas. Bless you all. Thank you. Nikki Gilbert, hello to you. Lisa Caraco, Roseanne McCausland, Joyce DeBolt, Sandra Schock, Amanda Adams, Jenny from Ireland, Lisa Duffy from Costa Rica, Julie Gotham, Donna Barnes, Kelly Fuller in England. Wow. Julie Deadman. Deadman, is that really it? Dedham. And Lisa Caraco and Charles and Dawn. Thank you. I don't know if you know how much I appreciate all of you watching every night. I'm overwhelmed seriously at how many of you watch and how many of you come up to me and say, I watch and I have this question and you want to know. You're really into this case, so thank you. Okay, questions. Cindy at the top. I'm just curious, when you do your nightly recap of the trial, are you just reading what you say or do you remember most of it? It's impressive either way. I don't have a teleprompter, but what I do, I've got this little notebook. I had one for Lori's trial too. It's right over here. And I after the trial's over for the day, I go to a quiet place and I read through all of my notes that I wrote on East Idaho News for the day. And I'll write down key points in here, like 844 hair sample DNA. And I'll kind of chart out the show, and then I'll go and pull clips based on the time that I think are interesting to hear. And then I'll build the slides, and then I'll come on and go live. And so it's that's how I do it. But, you know, things kind of just come together. But I appreciate that. Thank you. I try to, talk about what's interesting. But many days there's so many things to say. I just can't get it all in. I try to include like the prosecutors too and the defense to try to give them equal time, or at least not equal time, but however much time they had that day in the courtroom, I try to share with you here. You may have answered this, but can Lori listen to the trial? If she has the internet, she could. She doesn't have the internet. Well, she has the internet. She can communicate with people through like a tablet system. Or I guess if they have Court TV playing in the jail, because Court TV is airing the trial, but I don't think they're airing it in full. I think they air parts and go away. Really, you would need to stream it if you wanted to watch it, and I don't think she can stream it. Gene says, in regards to the money that Chad transferred into his children's accounts, could the insurance company demand that children give back the money that Chad stuck in their accounts? So you may recall that the morning that Chad was arrested, he transferred thousands of dollars into the accounts of 3 of his kids, I believe, and he used money elsewhere, and that likely came from the insurance money. But I don't think the insurance company could do that. Chad's being charged with the crime. They're going to order him to pay it back. If he's found guilty, he's got to come up with the money. He could then go to the kids and say, give it back. And I know your next question is say, how in the world is he ever going to pay it back if he's sentenced to life in prison or death and he doesn't have any money? Well, he's not. But on paper, he will still owe them. Everyone seems to forget, this is from Pam, that Alex Cox was not feeling well shortly after his wedding to Zulema and ran to Tijuana, Mexico for cold and flu meds, where he can also pick up Valium and Xanax for a little more than a dime. That's what I have always thought he took shortly before his death, was Xanax and Valium he purchased when he was in Tijuana. I used to travel to California for my employer. I know this was there. What are your thoughts? I think it's a valid point. They have said that he went to Mexico and did get those drugs shortly before he died. I've also heard the theory, not confirmed, that maybe he was one of the first people to get COVID. He got married in Vegas at the end of November of 2019. COVID really came on the scene in February, but maybe somehow, and I think one of the first cases wasn't one of the first cases in Vegas. I don't remember, but anyway, that could be an interesting theory that maybe he had it. He was not in the best health. Heart problems had run in the family. It still is crazy coincidental, if it is a coincidence. How did you feel when you got called out by name by Mr. Pryor? Yesterday, John Pryor called me out when Melanie Gibb said, he said, you did an interview with a reporter. Who was that? She said, Nate Eaton. He goes, oh, I forgot about Mr. Eaton. I mean, I was wondering where he was going to go with those questions, and I was glad it stopped where it did. He did that before at another hearing in St. Anthony in Fremont County. Man, I don't remember when, but he really went off about, I think it was the hearing about cameras in the courtroom. And he kept saying Mr. Eaton's website, and he pointed back at me. I was sitting behind him, and I know that I'm going to have horrible photos of myself on Mr. Eaton's website. Sorry, we try to take good pictures. Did Chad or Lori, he disagree with that. Maybe the prosecutors would too. Did Chad or Lori ever give an explanation for JJ and Tylee's death during police interrogation? Chad and Lori never talked to the cops. They were never interrogated. They lawyered up. They didn't say anything to the cops. So no, they never gave an explanation. I think that the prosecutor definitely wanted to talk to them, and they had an attorney from the get-go. They hired a local attorney, Sean Bartholick in Rexburg. When the kids were first reported missing, he was representing both of them. And he issued us a statement that, you know, the truth would come out or whatever while they were in Hawaii. And so once you have an attorney, once you tell the police, I have an attorney, you need to go through them. You don't have to talk. And they didn't talk. So they were never interrogated. If the jurors wanted to look up doctrine and covenants as it's related to this case, is that allowed? Especially if they are LDS. That's from Dee Dee. They're not supposed to look up anything outside of the courtroom in relation to this case. They are not supposed to go home and do any research. Now, if they're LDS and a scripture or any religion, let's say a Bible verse is quoted or a verse from the Quran, and you study that as your own personal faith, you don't have to stop reading your scriptures. You can still read them, but you can't. I don't think that you could go home and be like, I'm going to research Church of the Firstborn or all of that stuff. I mean, it might be human nature if you're curious, but I talked to some of the jurors who were on last year's trial, and they said when they got home, they did not want to think about the case at all. They didn't want to go research it. But one told me when it ended, she went home and binged watched everything. And Tom told me that too, the juror who I've interviewed here before, who wrote the book. He said he wanted to watch it all, and he's come almost every day to this trial. Will Zulema and David both testify? I believe so. They have not released a witness list, but I believe so. I mean, they were crucial. Zulema will. I believe Rob Wood or maybe John Pryor said that for sure. And David Warwick, he's been brought up so much, he's going to have to testify, in my opinion. Do you think Pryor was trying to be argumentative on purpose, or do you think he was getting caught up in all of it, even becoming frustrated, perhaps? Well, John Pryor has kind of an argumentative personality. This isn't really new for him. He's brash. He's far more, in your face. He does it to everyone, I think. So I don't know if that's a tactic or that's just who he is, but I don't know if he, I don't know what you mean by getting caught up to being frustrated. And I'm sure he gets frustrated too. We get frustrated when he leaves his mic off every single day. He was better today. I'd love to know the demeanor of the jury. This jury seems very smart, very put together, very focused. I've seen a couple of yawns on a couple of days. I'll admit that, but everybody yawns. And it's hard because my eye isn't on the jury 24/7. My eye is on the witness. It's on the defense. It's all over. But I'll look over, and there are some who are very clued in, who take notes. Good mix of men and women, old and young. There's several that in my mind, I'm like, man, I really want to interview them when this is over. I did that during Lori's trial. There was one woman sitting front and center, young mom, probably my wife's age. I'm like, I really want to interview her. I've met her. She's come a few days. I don't know if she's ready to do an interview. If she is, I'd love to talk to her. But there's other jurors too that you think, oh, she might look like she might talk on a media interview when this is over, and then they don't, and some do. So I will not be approaching any jurors until this trial is over, though, I can tell you that. Can you tell us what was inappropriately displayed on the screen yesterday? Oh, for a minute, Pryor put up a document. I have no clue what it was. The typing was so small, the print was so small, that then Lindsay Blake asked for a sidebar with the judge. The judge told the jurors to disregard what they saw. It was something about like grand jury proceedings and something about Lori Vallow's case, but that's all I know. I don't know what more was on there. Did you happen to know why Melanie and David live in separate homes? Deb says. Melanie, before they even got married, lived in Arizona and would travel between Arizona and Utah. David lived in Utah where he has a business. When I interviewed Melanie, she came up to Utah for the interview. So I don't know the particulars of their relationship at the moment, but I know that she said yesterday they're still married but they do live apart. There's so much cross that seems out of the scope of what's happened in the prosecution direct. How is this allowable? Christy. That's a great question, Christy. So that came up today. Excuse me. The prosecutors asked Judge Boyce if he would limit the scope of cross-examination. So in a trial, on the prosecutor's witness, the prosecutor asks questions. The defense can then follow up and ask questions based on those answers and questions. But it's not a free-for-all. You can't get up there and start asking about something completely different. It has to be stuff that was brought in by the prosecutor. Then when it's the defense's turn, they can call their witness and the prosecutor can do the same thing, but it has to be related to the subject. There have been witnesses where John Pryor has been all over the place and beyond what the prosecutor has asked, especially with Melanie Gibb. As was discussed today, when the prosecutor brought it up, Boyce said that he had understood that there was an agreement between the prosecution and the defense to let that happen to a point so that there wouldn't be a lot of repetition in calling witnesses back. So Melanie Gibb, Pryor got to spend a ton of time with her in maybe hopes or maybe with the plan of not calling her back, that he got it all done out of the way. Because you think if you had to recall a bunch of these witnesses, go through it all again, refresh the jury's memory, it just kind of drags things along. So that's kind of been the understanding, it sounds like, between both parties. The judge said he will keep an eye on it, though, and if he feels that if it goes too far out of bounds, he will stop it and will get things online. And there have been, the prosecutors have objected at some points about the way that Pryor has cross-examined. So it has been notified. It has been seen. Okay, I think that's it for the questions. Thank you all so much for watching. Big week in the trial. Another big week next week. Stay tuned. I'll be back here Sunday night, same time, to kind of give you a look at what we can expect next week. And then I'll be in and out for the following week. I hope you have a good weekend. I don't know what we have planned. Oh, we have to pack for our trip. I've been home maybe 30 minutes before I came on here. So I think we're going to go have dinner somewhere and enjoy our time. And by the way, if you want to leave a little nice message for my wife, Erica, it's our anniversary in 3 days. So we get to go out of town for my friend's wedding, but the day before is our anniversary. So it'll be nice to spend our anniversary together. Last year, we didn't. But you know what? So many of these prosecutors, the defense, so many of these people are not with their families, so I'm not even complaining. I think there's been 2 or 3 different cops, including Rob Wood's not a cop, but a prosecutor. They've all had their birthdays in Boise. while they've been away from their families. So hopefully they get to go home a little bit. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. See you on Sunday.